A deadly plane crash in Hawaii, the worst aviation accident in the U.S. in years. 9 people killed, the twin-engine plane erupting in flames after slamming into the ground.
Assist Battalion 4, Battalion 5 with a downed aircraft near Mokuleia Beach Park.
The tragedy possibly witnessed by family members. What we're learning about this horrifying accident.
Deadly storms. Oh, man. Heavy rain, high winds batter the nation's heartland. 40 million Americans on alert. Damaging hail, tornado, and flash flood threats. Plus, does this look like the first day of summer?
Striking the airstrike, President Trump explaining his crucial decision to call off a retaliatory attack on Iran for downing that surveillance drone. His rationale and this question, could a strike still happen? Team coverage, including a report from the region.
10th death. The State Department confirming another American died in the last year while visiting the Dominican Republic. The country's tourism minister speaking out why he's criticizing recent reports.
And positively beastly. Dogs with dastardly looks vying for the title of world's ugliest dog. Howls instead of cat calls at this canine competition. Who came in first?
Live from ABC News in New York, this is Good Morning America.
Good morning, and let's get right to our top story. The breaking news overnight involving a fatal crash of a skydiving plane in Hawaii.
Yeah, 9 people dead, no survivors here, and worse, some family members of the people on board were actually waiting at the airport and they possibly witnessed this crash.
This morning, the investigation into what went wrong. ABC's Marcy Gonzalez is on the story from our LA bureau. Marcy, good morning.
Good morning, Whit. This is absolutely horrible. The details are still coming in this morning. We do know the medical examiner and local investigators are on the scene right now of what is the deadliest civil plane crash since 2015. Overnight, this plane bursting into flames as it crashed in Hawaii, killing all 9 people on board.
Assist Battalion 4, Battalion 5 with a downed aircraft near Mokuleia Beach Park.
The twin-engine skydiving plane coming down just after takeoff from Dillingham Airfield on Oahu's North Shore. Firefighters rushing to the fiery scene.
When we was driving this way, we saw big fire. Firemen trying to put it out. Crazy.
Transportation officials saying 6 people on board the Beechcraft 65 King Air were employees of the Oahu Parachute Center. The other 3, customers. Some of the victims' family members possibly witnessing the crash.
They left some family members behind and then they took off on the flight.
On their website, the Oahu Parachute Center advertising that they've brought thousands of customers on tandem jumps with highly qualified instructors, saying safety is our #1 priority. This morning, the company still hasn't commented on the crash that left even seasoned first responders stunned.
In my 40 years as a firefighter here in Hawaii, this is the most tragic aircraft incident that we had. We had some helicopters with the military, but this is a civilian plane that went down and with that many people on board.
And officials say they have identified the victims but aren't releasing their names yet. The FAA and the NTSB are now heading to the scene to investigate the cause of this deadly crash. Dan?
Yeah, you can hear the emotion in the voice of that firefighter. Marcy, thank you very much for your reporting this morning. We're going to move on now to our other breaking story this morning. Severe weather, high winds, hail, power outages, even deaths. 300 damaging storm reports from South Carolina all the way up to Colorado, where it is snowing this morning on the first full day of summer. And Rob Marciano is right there. Robert, good morning to you.
Good morning, Dan. Get a load of this. Can you believe it? The first full day of summer, and we are seeing snow and some thunder snow as well. That tells you how dynamic this storm system is, and it's triggering, as you mentioned, 300 damaging storm reports across much of the country, including a 95-mile-an-hour wind right here in Colorado. Here's some winds for you out of near Kansas City yesterday with some hail as well. They had winds to 80 miles an hour. Over 140,000 without power from Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina. Nashville seeing some damage and debris from 70-plus mile-an-hour winds there. We did have 2 fatalities in Illinois and Missouri because of trees coming down. Springfield, Tennessee, you see some trees on top of cars there. All right, where are we going to see it today? As this cold core system swings into the plains, well, we'll see the damage in the plains today again with the most likely storms across Oklahoma City and through parts of Tulsa and Wichita as well. Could see some tornadoes with this, and it stretches down into the southeast as well. And we've got some rain coming along with this. And yes, some snow piling up here in Colorado. Unbelievable. Eva, we'll have much more of this throughout the program. Back over to you.
That's not what you expect to see on the first full day of summer, Rob. All right, thanks, Rob. We'll check back in with you later. Now to the tensions between the U.S. and Iran. The president explaining why he backed off a prepared strike. This as the FAA urges airlines to avoid Iranian airspace after flight radar shows the missile that took down an American drone came close to a commercial airliner. Our live team coverage starts with ABC senior national correspondent Terry Moran at the White House. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning, Eva. It was the attack that didn't happen. And in that instant, it seems that whole tense U.S.-Iran dynamic shifted. And U.S. allies and adversaries in the region and around the world are now recalibrating their estimation of President Trump and of the U.S. role in the world. But first, they're trying to figure out what happened. This morning, President Trump is offering explanations of why he changed his mind about attacking Iran at the last minute, telling NBC News he asked generals about casualties.
They said, came back, said, sir, approximately 150. And I thought about it for a second. I said, you know what? They shot down an unmanned drone, plane, whatever you want to call it. And here we are sitting with 150 dead people. That would have taken place probably within a half an hour after I said go ahead. Yeah. And I didn't like it. I didn't think it was proportionate.
Trump also tweeting, "We were cocked and loaded to retaliate," but adding, "I am in no hurry." On Capitol Hill, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, who says she was not notified about the aborted attack, urged calm.
De-escalate, de-escalate, de-escalate. Take a deep breath and de-escalate.
But Iran shows no signs of backing down, releasing this video of what Tehran claims is part of the wreckage of the drone it shot down Thursday, and insisting that drone had violated Iranian airspace, which the U.S. denies. U.S. CENTCOM spokesperson Lieutenant Colonel Earl Brown saying, "We have no reports of recovered debris," and adding, "At no point in time did any U.S. aircraft enter Iranian airspace on June 19, 2019. With the Iranian economy reeling from U.S.-led sanctions, the regime is seeking to raise the tension in the Persian Gulf and vowing not to yield, as the country's foreign minister made clear to Martha Raddatz earlier this month.
Threats against Iran never work. Never threaten an Iranian. Try respect. That may work.
Back now with Terry at the White House. And Terry, is the White House still planning on a military strike, or are they looking to pursue a diplomatic solution now instead?
Well, Eva, there's no question this non-attack turned the page. Look, the president and the White House are going to say all options remain on the table, but it is clear the Pentagon telling ABC News that they are in effect standing down. There are no preparations for an imminent attack, and the U.S. has requested a UN Security Council on Monday. We also know that President Trump is looking to more sanctions. At the end of the day, he's looking for a deal, but it sure sounds like Iran wants an end to sanctions first. Eva?
All right, Terry Moran for us at the White House. Thank you. Whit?
And Eva, the proximity of the Iranian missile that downed an American drone to a passenger flight is leading multiple airlines to change their routes. ABC's foreign correspondent James Longman joins us from the Gulf of Oman. And James, you're learning more about that mid-air scare.
Yeah, good morning, Whit. That's right. When that U.S. drone was shot down by Iran, a Qatar Airways flight was just 45 miles away, according to the FAA. Flight radar shows the Qatar jet, which was on its way to Bangkok from Doha, passed almost directly between the launch point and the drone. And at the speed those planes fly, there's every chance that missile could have locked on to the wrong target, Whit.
Reports would have been devastating, and we know that U.S. air carriers are taking that very seriously. How is this incident impacting flights in the region?
Yeah, so that close call and rising tensions here prompted the FAA to ban U.S.-operated flights over Iran, the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. Some of the carriers affected include United, UPS, FedEx, Atlas and Polar Air. And the FAA says about 31 flights a week are affected. And note that a few international airlines are doing the same, including major companies like British Airways and Lufthansa. There is still a lot of uncertainty here.
James Longman in the Gulf of Oman for us. We appreciate your reporting. Dan, over to you.
Whit and James, thank you both. We're going to move on now to the other developing story involving the Trump administration, a plan to arrest 2,000 family members in massive deportation raids that are expected to be carried out this weekend. This morning, the fear in immigrant communities and the officials in some cities who are actively pushing back against the feds. ABC's Lana Zak is on the story from Washington. Lana, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Dan. These mass raids are unprecedented for targeting families in their homes. But the acting director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement tell ABC that the raids are, quote, not about fear, but he says the integrity of the system.
This morning, Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents planning a mass roundup of families who are in the U.S. illegally. In an unprecedented show of force, pre-dawn raids of more than 2,000 people who have already received deportation orders are expected tomorrow in as many as 10 major cities.
One of the greatest pull factors for families to come here is they know once they arrive in the United States, they remain here untouched. We have to change that message.
The plan revealed days after President Trump tweeted that sweeping deportations were imminent. Several mayors, including in Los Angeles, Baltimore, and Chicago, are refusing to cooperate, urging immigrants to know their rights, saying by law they do not have to open their door for ICE agents without a warrant signed by a judge.
Every American should be outraged that an elected official would use the terror of families and children as campaign material.
This comes as a record number of families are being detained at the U.S.-Mexico border, where Border Patrol detention facilities are overwhelmed and ICE detention centers strained as well, with a lack of space, especially for families, prompting questions this morning about the focus of these raids.
Our priority and the priority of the federal government should be to go after people that are of clear and present danger, and that's gang members and felons, not necessarily families.
Our priorities will remain the same. It's always going to be to go after the criminal aliens that have committed heinous crimes against American citizens. But priorities does not mean all other demographics are exempt.
And we are witnessing a striking schism between local law enforcement and ICE. Many of the police departments in these cities say that they will not assist ICE in these raids. Chicago PD even terminating ICE's access to their databases. Eva.
All right, Lana Zak for us this morning. Now to the presidential race. Democratic hopefuls on the campaign trail trying to drum up support in an early primary state. We are now just 4 days ahead of the first Democratic debate. 500 days to go before the 2020 election. ABC's White House correspondent Tara Palmieri is in Columbia, South Carolina, with a look at what the candidates are focusing on. Good morning to you, Tara.
Good morning, Eva. The South Carolina primary is more than 250 days away, but these candidates are all down here. They were at a steaming hot fish fry trying to make the case to African-American voters. That's because the Palmetto State is one of the first primaries in the region.
There's a whole bunch of candidates going to be coming on this stage.
Overnight, a show of unity. 21 of the 23 Democratic candidates on stage together in South Carolina at Congressman Jim Clyburn's annual fish fry.
Whomever the Democratic nominee is, we have to stay together and elect a Democrat president of the United States of America.
A bitter standoff between Senator Cory Booker and Vice President Joe Biden, ending with a hug. This after one of the most divisive weeks on the campaign trail.
For his posture to be to me, I've done nothing wrong, you should apologize, I'm not a racist, is so insulting.
Biden defiant after Booker called on him to apologize for reminiscing about the days of civility in the Senate when he worked with segregationists.
Are you going to apologize like Cory Booker
Apologize for what?
Cory Booker's called for it.
Cory should apologize. He knows better.
The other candidates vying for Clyburn's endorsement in the early primary state and making the case to black voters. And they're not satisfied with Biden's silence.
Look, I've said very clearly he needs to apologize.
Joe Biden hasn't apologized.
He should apologize.
Should he apologize?
Well, I'm gonna leave that to him to.
Would you apologize?
Well, I wouldn't say that, so.
What Joe Biden said was very important, which is that in order for us to solve the challenges of this country, we've got to be able to come together.
But some voters more concerned about who will beat President Trump than anything else.
Right now, at this point, Joe Biden has the best chance at beating Donald Trump.
I think Biden is our best chance.
I think any of those guys could beat Trump.
Congressman Jim Clyburn is a bit of a kingmaker down here, so his endorsement matters, and he is defending Joe Biden. Now, these candidates have a very busy weekend ahead of them. They're speaking at a South Carolina Democratic primary event and a Planned Parenthood forum. Dan?
All right, Tara, thank you very much. Let's bring in our ringer, ABC News chief political analyst Matthew Dowd, who joins us from Texas. Matthew, good morning. Let's start here with Joe Biden. This whole dust-up over his comments about working with segregationist senators. Is this likely to be a long-term problem for him, or do you think it's just a blip?
Well, I think the longer-term problem for Joe Biden is the fact that he got elected first before 8-track tape came and went. I mean, that's the problem with Joe Biden. I think he still thinks the words and the actions and the policies of the 70s when he first came there apply today. I think it's not going to politically. He can deal with this next week. He's got a debate next week. I think he can deal with this next week in the midst of the first debates next week. But I think, as I say, this particular incident isn't necessarily a long-term problem. The long-term problem is, does he fit the 21st century electorate that he's about to face?
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out whether I should explain to our younger viewers what an 8-track tape is, or maybe a Betamax. Anyway, let me
tell
move
them
on.
it's long before iPod. It's long
Yes.
before iPod.
Yes.
It's long before downloading.
Yes, distinctly analog. Let's stay on this issue of the Democrats running for president. Race, as we've seen, has been an issue for Biden. It's also now an issue for one of the buzzy young Democratic candidates, one of the candidates who may not know what 8 tracks are. There's this video that's now surfacing of Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who skipped the campaign events in South Carolina. He returned to his home city, where he's mayor, in South Bend, Indiana, where he was surrounded by angry community members, some of them holding Black Lives Matter signs. There's outrage now in South Bend after the fatal police shooting of a black man. Take a listen.
We set up the body cameras, right? And then they failed us when we needed it. So if you're saying it's not good enough, you're right.
And that was a relatively tame moment. There were other moments where he was being screamed at. And there's been talk for a while that Buttigieg, who's been on somewhat of a rocket ride, actually really needs to make inroads with black voters nationally if he's going to make it. So how is this moment likely to play for him?
Well, I think I've always thought for candidates like Pete Buttigieg, the biggest test would not come in their rise, but would come when they went through a gauntlet of bad press. And I think this is a test of him. The other part I think that's affected of Pete Buttigieg, he only has ever held one political office, and that's mayor of South Bend, Indiana. And he has to demonstrate that one political office he's held, he can do well, and he can bring the community together. If that frays in that community, then one of the major points that he's running on, which is what he's done in South Bend, Indiana, starts to deteriorate. Again, like Joe Biden, he's going to be in the midst of a debate next week. He's going to have to face these questions in this. But as any politician, as I look at any politician, the hardest part they have is when they go through the gauntlet. And we'll see how Mayor Pete survives through this first initial problem that he's never had before.
Yep, these candidates are being tested. That's the point of the system. Matthew Dowd, really appreciate your analysis. Eva, over to you.
All right, thanks, guys. Well, police are calling Wednesday's shooting that killed a rookie Sacramento police officer an ambush-style attack that lasted for hours. New dashcam video shows an officer approaching the gunman's home and then running for cover when shots were fired. Adele Ramos has been charged with the murder and the death of 26-year-old officer Tara O'Sullivan. Police say he used 2 assault rifles and 2 other guns that were strategically placed in that home. Officer Sullivan was escorting a woman to pick up her belongings at the home when the attack took place.
A horrific crash on a highway in New Hampshire involving a truck and a number of motorcycles. It left 7 people dead, 3 others injured. You can see the truck in flames on the side of the road as wrecked motorcycles are scattered across the pavement. Witnesses say drivers jumped out of their cars to try to help the wounded until the ambulances ultimately arrived.
Let's get back to weather. Rob Marciano in Breckenridge, Colorado on this first full day of summer. We finally get a nice weekend in New York, and you are playing in the snow, Rob.
Well, I do consider this to be a nice weekend here in Breckenridge. It caps off this epic year where they've had 485 inches of snow, and obviously it's not quitting. This week or 2 days ago, we shot this video. Check out this drone shot coming up the Blue River, which is just raging right now, trying to melt off some of this snow of the 10-mile range there. And they may break 500 inches today if we get the 10 or 15 inches that could very well possibly fall. Big Sky, Montana, you got a half a foot of snow. Look at this. It looks like a postcard in the middle of winter, and it's the first full day of summer. We under a winter weather advisory here across parts of the Rockies, including Breckenridge. So snowfall, an additional half a foot potentially in this area. And this cold core will spur more in the way of severe storms, not just today, but tomorrow as well across Tornado Alley. That's checking what's happening nationally. Time now for a look at your local forecast.
Well, hello and good morning, Washington. What a fantastic weekend ahead of us. Temperatures reaching the lower 80s this afternoon, partly to mostly sunny skies. Some of those added